right, there you go.
Okay. I'm calling to order the Finance Committee Subcommittee on Long-Term Debts and Obligations. For new business tonight, so we were going to do an overview of the long-term obligations of the town.
That we
Um, yeah, that we know of. So I had Josh send me some materials. I'm happy to send those or have him send those around. It was just a bunch of DLS reports for us to look at. I wanted to make sure that we could have the same knowledge base going in. Um,
absolutely need to.
and I feel like it would probably be helpful to ask Justin or Lori to attend one of the meetings after this to make sure that we've had time to review the reports and then can dig into them further. Someone's
And
keeping minutes, right? Sorry, I forgot to ask.
pardon?
One of you is keeping minutes?
Oh,
Let's see. It looks like he put the meeting on record, Dana.
Yeah, but we have to keep minutes for so that next time we can vote on them.
so you're saying that we need to allocate a clerk, so to speak?
Yes.
Well, go ahead. But because I'm short, is that what you're thinking, John? It's a God, it's a wrong. But
Well, it'll cut down on the amount of time you have to talk as well.
all right, there you go. All right, okay. So moved.
I
All
like
right.
this committee. I nominated Dana to be the chair and you to be the secretary. I'm going
How
to
did you get
resign
out of
this.
all the work on this committee?
Okay.
That's what I want
Oh,
to know.
no.
So the meeting went public on at 7:31. Okay. Okay.
So I
Uh,
have a few of the DLS reports. I'm gonna ask Josh to send them around after. I think, John, you already have them.
I do. And so part of the problem I have with that with those reports, Dana, is what I'll step back here. So I've been working with Lori going through the detail, and so I basically have taken the general ledger for both the town for 24, 25, 26 actual, 26 budget, and I've got it all by account number, so I can go look at the data any way I want. And one of the things that started to terrify me is they do not look at unfunded liabilities as debt. And by that, I mean, so the pension and the other benefits, the health insurance for retirees is not considered debt to these guys.
Okay.
And so in those DSL reports, it only considers actual debt that's been authorized and then the debt that's been bonded. So those reports are good for that. But if we start to look at this thing out over a 4 to 5 year span, I mean, it gets to me, I started to panic. So, and the reason being is this thing is approaching to the $250 million level. And I don't think any of your DSL reports even begin to show that. And when I say approach the $250 million level, I'm looking at both the school, the town, and the enterprise funds because Nick and I have had a lot of discussions on this. Everybody says, well, that's a debt exclusion. You don't need to worry about it, this and that. But Nick and I have coming at this thing from a one taxpayer standpoint. And there's one taxpayer that's got to pay, that's on the hook for all of this.
mhm.
And so that's why um, I thought instead of me just being overly concerned on my own, maybe three of us could take a look at it and somebody can tell me, John, you're all wrong. Or once we get the figures together, then we could send them over to Lori and the school and just see what they feel about that. But I feel fairly confident in my numbers.
Okay. You said pensions, retiree health insurance, and then the school was the third thing.
Yeah, so we've got well, I wish I would I should get I've got a worksheet I've started for all this stuff, data, and
Okay.
I can send that. I was going to try and share it, but it doesn't look like we have an option to do that on this meeting today. Uh,
Yeah, we can ask Josh about that for next time.
okay, because is what I'll do is I put in a request to the school committee for records because, for example, They've got the 2023 audit out there, but they don't have the 2024. And why the audits are important is nowhere in any of the financial records do you find any mention of the pension and the other benefits liability, except when they do the audit and the auditors do a one journal entry at the end of every year that says, here's what your unfunded liability is.
Okay.
So, so for,
If I may, John,
uh,
so what I think to me, and tell me that I'm incorrect on this, the real focus of what we're supposed to be, or we feel that we should be doing, is to make sure that we can present a clear and accurate picture for the taxpayer of exactly what it is they owe. Let alone those unfunded mandates, which, according to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, they want that to start level funding in 2031. That's really not that far away. Um, I don't know if you're aware of this, Dana, but other communities are already talking about trying to see if they could get the Commonwealth to allow them to kick the can down the road on that. The unfortunate part to that is that even I think Randolph was one of the towns, and it was literally on their minutes of their meeting of their council that they were advised that that's probably not going to work because that's why they're in the position they're in right now is because it's been kicked down the road. And you've got these massive, as I look at them, debt bombs there. And here we are, we're adding more debt. I mean, we're talking, what is it, 100 what is it, 130 or $135 million for the water, correct?
well, so here's what we got. So
Okay.
the last official balances I have.
Yep.
So the school audit at the end of 2023 said the school debt was at 40,525,000. The pension liability was 14,712,000. And then the other benefits liability is 130,115,812.
140 million?
130
Oh,
million,
yep.
130. And so that brings the total school debt, I look at it to be 185,353,868 at the end of 2023. Now, the Bridgewater portion of that is what, 60%? And then the
Yeah.
Rainham portion of that is 40%. So if we take 60% of that debt, that's going to be somewhere in the 80 to $90 million range. And then the town debt is 29 million in actual debt. The pension liability is 42,168,000.
How much again, John, was the pension?
42,168,000.
Yep. Okay. Yep. 42. Yep.
And then the other benefits liability, which is the health insurance, is 39,042,000. And that gives you a total of 110,592,000. That was
So
at
then
the
you're just about 200 million total.
just about two. There you go. Yeah.
Yep.
So that was at the end of 2023. So 2024, the the town has agreed. Their part, as Nick said, that we've got a mandate on the pension side that this thing has to be fully funded by 2031. So they've stepped up their payment in 2024 or 2025. I know they made a $5.1 million payment, and they're scheduled to make 6.1 in 2026 and 6.3 in 2027. When I went out and looked at the reports, they made a $3 million payment, I think, in 2024. The unfunded liability actually got worse. It didn't get better. So that means that maybe at the $5 million level it will, but I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but we're looking at, so if we look at you said 200 million, Dana, we know we have a $21 million fire station that comes online in 2025.
Yeah.
We know
Mhm.
that they've authorized $140 million in
140.
water and sewer debt between 2024 and 2028 that's got to go online, and somebody has to pay for those. And then if you start to look at all that with the increased pension payments and then also the pay as you go health insurance. So when a retiree has a claim, they submit bills and it comes out of the current day operating funds. So that's included in the health insurance number. So I think that we have, once we get all
For
the
the health insurance, though, aren't the municipal employees part of a purchasing group?
they are part of a purchasing group. Yeah, for the health insurance part, but the retirees, they've got so much of their medical costs that are guaranteed.
That's
Okay.
correct.
So that and
Okay.
this
It's a different policy for that.
Okay.
yeah. So between the town and the school, without taking out Raynham's portion, the two of them at the end of 2023 was $170 million, and they're making minimal payments to that.
Okay.
I mean, when I say minimal, I think the town makes $100,000 a year payment into that trust fund, and then the rest of it they just fund through the regular operating cash.
And here's my issue in this, and it's very simple, is that we are in a position where what if the town decided that, you know, uh, Justin comes into a meeting and tells the town council that, well, I just got word that, the Commonwealth is not going to, they're not going to give us any more time. 2031, we own this.
Well, that's only for the pension part, Nick.
Right.
Only
And,
for the
and
pension part.
so, but that's a substantial chunk of money, let alone what we're
Yeah.
already bonding. I mean, you've got the 140 for the water. And by the way, I think, John, I believe you also have access to this information relative to the local town that, um, because of public pressure, which we have the exact same pressure, from the populace, that they're paying for their water, and there's, the PFAS numbers are high. So this particular community felt that that was important to them. So I think it was bonded, what, 30 or 40 million, John? I think it was somewhere
Yeah.
in that vicinity.
Mhm.
Okay, between 27 and 30 something million. That's correct. Um,
Mhm.
and that's number one. Number two, that was just for filtering of PFAS. Then they also said, by the way, it's kind of cute. You have to read the minutes. It costs them another $500,000 per year in maintenance for those filters. That's $1 million every 2 years. That just in maintenance. We're not even talking the cost. But what I'm trying to get at here is, let's add to that the fact that you were at the meeting, Dana, when we got the school budget. Um,
Yeah.
they basically told us they were looking at about a 4.7 or 4.9% increase. That's why there was a thing called Proposition 2.5. Um, when that was enacted, and shamefully, John and I were, well, John, yeah, you were there, around. I was certainly involved at the time. I actually had Barbara Anderson, from the Citizens of Limited Taxation, who was the spearhead for this particular thing, on my show in Bridgewater. And interesting woman, but what they proposed this for was, it would make things so much easier when you walk into negotiations. Okay, guys, I'm not saying you're going to get 2.5% this year, but that's what we're limited to in negotiations. And it just, that disappeared. It was like vapor. And that's not how things go, because the taxpayer has acquiesced constantly and said, okay, I'll take this much, 3, 4, 5%. And John, if I'm not mistaken, I think you have a little bit more knowledge in this than I do, that when they're telling us that they only get a 2% raise, let's say, that's not an actual figure, correct? They're actually, okay. That's
So
not correct.
when they talk about that, so they gave everybody a COLA, cost of living increase, but they also get their step increases. So if you go
Unless you're maxed out on the steps.
right, and it's hard to figure out, I mean, where you are in that, which employee is there or not. But
Yeah.
it looks like last year that maybe the total pay increase was somewhere between 4 and 5%. Uh, over the year before, which is, when you're in the finance committee, you're thinking it's just a 2% raise. And then the bigger nut to it, though, is that they don't talk about the cost of the benefit. And so the benefit, that means whenever you give 5 or 6% raises, the pension benefit is going to go up by that amount as well, because they qualify for different levels depending on where they are in the process. So, and then they've also got life insurance and other wage-based benefits that nobody can give you a number on. They can estimate it, which is what I've been doing as well. But when you go look at it, back to the 2.5, if you give the school 4.5% as they're asking for, and then the debt's going up at a rate of about 6 to 7% to principal and interest on the debt that we're putting out there, and then you're giving out pay increases in health insurance at the town level between 5 and 7%. I mean, that means that the other operating expenses have to go negative almost, and that
Yeah.
means paving of roads, the library, the community center, the elderly, the veterans affair. I don't know how we're going to go do this without an override. And
And
then the question becomes is what do you even go ask for in a override when you're sitting there with probably somewhere around $240 million worth of debt? Um, what would make that? I don't even know where to begin to figure out what it would be. I mean, when the schools came through and asked for 6 million, I mean the 6 million wouldn't even put a dent in their $130 million of health insurance liability,
right, right.
and they
So I
want to
think
go ahead.
just
I'm
to
sorry.
like take us back for a second. So I'm hearing a couple of themes that probably we want to dig into as a committee. So I think the at the state level we call it OPEB, which is like other pension liabilities. So that's what I'm calling it here. But like we want to dig into that for both the schools and the town. And then also this idea on debt affordability, which is like, how do we determine how much additional debt the town can take on? At the state
Mhm.
level, there's a committee that does it, and there's a calculation to how the Commonwealth can issue debt and what's affordable over time. And so it seems like we should potentially dig into like, how are we determining that we can take on the additional fire station and the water and sewer when,
Well, you see, yeah, and you're exactly right. The water and sewer will fall outside of this because they're in enterprise funds, and we're going to be raising those rates. Like the water
yeah,
rate they've already said is going up 10% a year, 10% a year on average for the next 5 to whatever number of years to go pay for this. The sewer rates are going up 20% a year
Right.
to pay for their part year
And
over
by
year. But they won't. So then when you start to look at all that, like Justin, they don't talk about that as anything they're worried about because they have to go raise those rates to cover that debt.
okay,
And then the fire station was a debt exclusion, so they don't consider that part of that. But I do know the ratio, so I think it's 5% of the assessed value of the property in the town is what you
okay.
can go put into debt or whatever. And I think we're something like, I don't know, 4.8 billion or whatever. I don't know what the exact number is today, but right around the 200 million mark, which we're there. But some of it is included in the water and sewer, some of it's debt exclusion. But again, if you have to start going to pay for health insurance, like, uh, so I guess maybe get back to your point. You're absolutely right. I think that's what we should be doing. We should
So
be,
yeah, that was
yeah,
our second agenda item was like what are our priority focus
yeah,
areas? So I think it's
Mhm.
definitely like the OPEB, and then it
yeah.
seems like debt affordability, and then also just like making sure we understand all the different funding mechanisms because like obviously with water and sewer you can raise the rates. I think state finance and forget that you can actually do different things at the muni level. And so I think looking at that, but then I think also just looking at our overall capital plan and how are we deciding which projects are getting priority and how that's getting moved forward. And then health insurance keeps coming up too. I wonder if that's outside of the purview of our long-term obligations committee.
Well, it
I
is.
don't think so.
For one reason why I disagree with that is because an audit tells you their balance sheet is if this town went out of business tomorrow, everybody would be on the hook. So we for that whole OPEB deal. I mean, you just can't walk away from it. The
Yeah.
Mass Teachers Association is going to come after every piece of
Right. I
property
think it's
in this
within the
place.
finance committee's purview. I don't know that it falls under the long-term OBS, the health insurance plan. I think maybe what I would be interested in is looking
Well,
at the
Dana,
retirement trust
Hold on,
fund
Nick.
yeah,
and
okay, I'm sorry.
figuring out how that is working. Because I do think that retirement trust fund and making that solvent falls in this sort of long-term obligations.
Right, but one of the things where I think that you're we're not thinking about this correctly is whenever like let's say the retirees' healthcare goes up by the 10 or 15% a year, and they're submitting those. For example, the school paid $3.4 million in health benefits to the retirees last year, or that's in their budget. They paid 10 million to the current employees, but they paid another 3 million in insurance in medical claims for retirees. If you go look at the school budget of 111 million, our side they paid 3 million of it. That's almost 3% of their whole budget just for retiree health care. That's because those people aren't even helping in the system, but now they're using it to say, well, we only spend so much per teacher now or per pupil. That's because it's getting eaten up by the retiree healthcare.
Right. And
But
that
they
shouldn't be
have
part of the equation.
they've got the PEC formed looking at healthcare at the school level at least.
Who's on the PEC?
They said it at the meeting last week. Nick, do you remember? There were some members of the school committee. There was a couple of, I think there was a town councilor or two
Right.
from each town.
Correct. I don't recall exactly which people it was. Then if I may, and this really goes in, falls in with the conversation that we're having. Um, a couple of things. What I'm hoping also can be one of the directives that we as a committee can come up with is since we are advisory by nature, that when we come up with all of this, we should also be able to say, these are some of the recommendations we would like to make in order to solve the problem, if that's entirely possible. Let's say, for instance, as a start, I thought it was interesting, and you were there. One of the counselors asked about the school's health insurance, and they're expecting a 15% increase. I guess it sounded like it wasn't exactly etched in stone yet. So, wouldn't it make sense? And not that government ever really does, to be honest with you, but when it comes to something like this, they're all part of Bridgewater. Why couldn't they all use the same health
So
insurance?
that's what the PEC is designed to do, which is why it's good that they launched it. So in order to change health insurance plans, because they're their own entity, they
Mhm.
have to select it and you have to pull together a PEC with there's union representation on it as well. And then they evaluate options. And so they could join, I think the Bridgewater town is in like the Plymouth County Purchasing Trust.
Mhm.
Um, they could join GIC, they could join Maya, they could privately purchase, which is what they do now. And so I guess they changed their broker and they think they're going to get a different rate. And the reason it wasn't set in stone, the superintendent said they were waiting for the new quotes to come in off of the RFI they put out.
But
If-
Dana, so if you take that to a different thing though, your purchasing power is much greater if you're part of a mass group
So
or
Absolutely.
that's what the
even part of a
PEC
town group.
is. So that's what the PEC is
Yeah,
designed to study. But
right.
because there's so many different players involved, the Division of Local Services scripts out like how can you change health insurance plans as a municipality, and there's all these steps you have to take. And so the school committee has taken those steps, but it's just a slow process.
Right. But I guess the reason why I think it's a concern for us is if let's say that their rates go up only 10%. So that means the 3.3 million is going to be somewhere probably around 3.6 million
Yeah.
next year. Because I mean, the only way to stop the retiree healthcare would be for the retirees to die.
Right.
And then that would slow the whole thing down. But there's more retired people on it now than there are active by about a 40 to 60 split. But I think part of what we need to go out, once we get the figures right, I agree with you. We got to roll this thing out and see how it's going to look maybe 2, 3, 4 years from now. But we have to include that increase in the retiree healthcare stuff because they can tell you whatever they want, but that for the retiree part, there's no way around that. Their benefits are gonna go up and up and up, the same as medical insurance goes up. And they're not putting anything, I think they pay something into it, but not a whole lot, you know?
Yeah, so
Um,
that'll definitely be one of our priority areas.
Yeah,
Um,
because on one last note on that, I did go out to the state, and the OPEB liability for the state of Mass is $46.7 billion. Less than 1% of it has been funded by the municipalities across the state. And it's a pay as you go basis. So that tells you whatever that liability is, or whatever we paid this year, it's going to go up by the amount of the health insurance increase, you know? And I think that whether you want to call it debt or not, I think we should include that for everybody to understand, maybe.
okay. Yeah, I think that's definitely fair to pull that in because it's talking
Okay.
about like basically discretionary and non-discretionary spending, right? When you're trying to
Right.
develop the
That's
town's
it.
budget every year, you look at the non-discretionary items first and then how much is left for everything else, and then you try and figure out tax rate and other things. Um, all right, so that's retirements definitely seems to be like the priority area. Do we want to focus on the schools first or the town piece first? I'm just trying to think about how to structure meetings moving forward.
Well, um, I mean, I've gone out and gotten the last valuations for the town of Bridgewater. So you got three parts in the Bridgewater one. You got let's see, what was it? Hold on 1 second. Um, you got Bridgewater in the retirement. Oh, so we've got all. So the Raynham School District is in there as well, and then yeah, you got the Raynham School District, Bridgewater Housing, and then Bridgewater, the town of. So all three of those have their own separate valuations, and
Where are you getting that, John?
that came from the Plymouth County retirement audit.
Okay.
Um, And so they did an actuarial evaluation as of January 1, and it went out, showed you, like, for example, there's 177 active employees in Bridgewater, and there's 160 that are retired or disabled on the Bridgewater plan. On the school plan, there's 245 that are active, and then the retired and disabled are 172, and their unfunded liability is much less. It's only 17 million on the school side, but their health insurance is through the roof. So I do have those actuarial tables here, and then I'm trying to get the amount of money we're paying in every year from the school side. I've got the 2026 budget, but I don't have 2025 actuals or 2024. And if I could get those, I could fill this table out and send it off to you. And then it breaks all of this out.
Okay.
What the beginning balance, what we put into it, what was added to it for debt, and then how it changed in valuation as well.
Okay. Perfect. So we can review that next time for sure. I think it would also just be helpful for us all to be working from the same pool of information. So if you want to send that to Josh and then have him send it out.
Okay. I mean, unless somebody else has I've spent
No,
time on it. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. I think it's just helpful to have the same, like, let's look at the
Mhm.
same analysis. You've already thankfully dug into it, and it'll give us just something to structure our conversation around.
Yeah, because I mean that's all. When I started my training with Lori, they said to me, "Well, just go out to the state website. They've got all these nice figures out there." And then when you go look at the audit report, the debt doesn't reflect anywhere near what's on the audit report. And I'll go, "Well, wait a minute. I mean, do we owe somebody something or don't we here?" And then so that's what started me down this journey.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great line of thinking. Are there things we want to prioritize for this upcoming budget cycle? Because we have like now kicked off budget development with the town.
Well, I think that we need to go understand, I mean, what they're putting in there for pay raises and then what they're going to put in there for retiree benefits.
So they're probably not going to be able to tell us what they're putting in for pay raises unless the contracts are finalized.
It has been completed,
I
correct?
know, but they've got to have an idea in their mind.
I'm sure they do, but because
But
we
you don't
meet in a
publish that,
public forum,
right?
it
Yeah.
would not be available until it's been signed.
Hmm. Right, I understand that because especially if they're in negotiations, it's
Yeah.
not
So I
tipping
don't know.
over.
Like if there's an active agreement, then they should be able, that should be a very quick answer. But if there is not,
Well, then maybe the way we should look at it for the budget process is that the payroll has to stay level funded. And then the benefits, what are they putting in for the increase in benefits? Because, for example, on the school side, if you have a 10% increase in benefits, then you paid out $13 million last year. That means you've gone up 1.3 million bucks.
yeah.
Fairly simple. So for the school, whatever you put in for a pay raise now has to come out of that 4.5%, as we can't give that as well as continue to fund the benefit.
This,
Something like that is the way I'm thinking of. Or the other thing too is if we don't do it that way, and they say, well, you got to give everybody cost of living raises. Well, then we say, okay, then we're going to have to cut people, right? There's
mhm.
only two ways to solve this because I don't think anybody has an appetite for an override this year. I do think they're talking about one for next year.
Well, it's been I've had several conversations with a few of the counselors, and they're very concerned about that picture. They don't think it's going to get better from the perspective of the taxpayer. They think it's going to get even more negative, and especially with the talk in the the investment world of a potential correction that they've been talking about for the last year and a half. This year it won't happen just because it's an election year, and politicians will do anything not to have a negative picture for the party in power. So, but that ends in November. What happens after that? And that's a whole
Well,
new ballgame.
Well, if we go back to what went on, like with the capital budget process, so they put together a 5-year plan, and I voted against it for the simple reason we couldn't find one thing to cut, and we're going to have to find something to cut. But in his plan, he's got $47 million to fix the roads. Where is that going to come from over the next 5 years? Does that mean that we're looking at bonding another $47 million for road repair? And if so, does that then, I mean, that, so if I looked at that thing, there was about $200 million, I think, in the 5-year capital plan.
So
And
I think
there's,
that's what gets me back to this idea of like debt affordability and how are we
right.
thinking about our 5-year plan
Okay.
to make
Yeah.
sure that we're living within the resources that are affordable for the bottom line.
Right. So if we're already at the 200 to $230 million range, and we're going to do 47 million, and then we've got to rebuild a library, and we've got to do a data center, all this other stuff. How is it going to be funded? So I think your point is exactly right. We bring this thing out, we take his capital schedule, we take the debt schedule we know about for the water, sewer, and everything else, and then we take the capital budget that they proposed, because at some point they're going to have to repair the roads. At some point, somebody said something they want to redo the fire station downtown. I haven't heard what they're talking about for the fire station. As my opinion would be sell the thing as quick as you
Sell it.
can and use it to fund whatever, not raises, but something to reduce the long-term debt of the town. But that's to your point, Dane. I think that's maybe a good way to do it, is we get the figures right, and then over a 5-year period, maybe we look at debt affordability or something. Whatever you said it very nicely. So whatever you did say,
Okay.
that seems like a good.
Yeah, I think it's the idea of debt affordability and like how do we determine that at a town level? And
Yep.
also it would be interesting, like I think as we get further into this to look at communities of similar size and where our debt puts us relative to them, just to give us a nice benchmark to see like, okay, are we in line with others or are we far off?
Mm-hmm. Well,
Okay.
I will tell you that I've done that, especially on the pension side. And as Nick brought up in the beginning of the conversation, a lot of the towns are cracking under pressure right now because they can't afford the pension. And so they're asking the board to push that mandate funding out by 4 to 5 years. And the pension board is saying, no, we can't kick the can down the road any longer. You know?
This could be a problem.
Yeah.
Um, and here we are. It's something you said earlier, Dana. It always intrigues me. According to one of the screens that we were provided with the school department, the required local contribution um, equals state aid plus or minus a district's net school spend, NSS, according to requirement. And that's the minimum amount a district, it says here, uh, spend, uh, needs to,
You're talking
must
about the
spend,
Chapter 70 formula?
pardon,
Are you talking about the Chapter 70 formula?
the budget, right. And
Yeah.
what's intriguing about that is, unfortunately, it says something to what you were talking about. What's the affordability, the true affordability of the population of your town? You can have a massive town, but it doesn't mean you have a wealthy town. And how do they calculate that? When's that taken into consideration?
It's all factored into a number of the state run programs. So there's Chapter 70, there's Chapter 71, there's also the special education circuit breaker. So state funding flows to towns based on a number of factors. The Chapter 70 funding formula is being looked at right now, and I think that is an area where Bridgewater could lean in. I know there was a public forum a while back where we had a nice presence, like a bunch of folks went to talk about it because it is really it's opaque unless you work in it every day. It's really hard to understand how they calculate these the foundation budgets or what they're called that you're talking about that formula. And so we should think about how we can talk to the town council about getting involved in the conversations that are happening. But that and then just understanding the flow of the state aid for sure.
So which part of the government are you involved in, Dana?
I was
So it
just going to
sounds
ask
like,
that
yeah,
question.
it sounds
Just
like
going to
you
ask that
know.
question.
I
You
work
might
in
know
the
you might know more about this whole thing than Nick and I put together. So maybe
I've been working for the Commonwealth in finance for 13 years. I work in the executive office for administration and finance.
so you do know more about this than we do.
You've been holding out.
I haven't been holding out. I just
Well, okay, so you're the perfect person whose brain we can pick. Um, these are important questions.
yeah, and I think it's
So,
all going to be about like who are we asking and how are we presenting it? Because I think the trickiest part about state finance is it's really confusing. And so we want to make sure that we're getting information that we feel like we can trust. And if that's from the team or if we need to like engage just some other folks who are experts in the field, I think that's something to think about too. I know the Division of Local Services has a ton of resources available for towns. Maybe we have them come in and talk to us. Like there's other options for us to get information on this type of stuff.
Right, because I heard though that the governor has set the state aid already, and it was level funded for us for this coming year. Is that
Our budget comes out tomorrow.
okay? All right, so
so we will know.
sure.
I think
Yeah.
she talked about it at MMA, which was last week, like Thursday, Friday or something. But
Okay.
Mhm.
Uh,
That's when that be right. That's when.
I mean, you must know what it is. You're on the inside up there. You can give us an I'm kid.
I cannot say.
I know. Right.
The budget comes out tomorrow.
You know, wait a minute. Hold on for a second. The governor preached transparency. You are contrary to transparency. I cannot speak about that. See, this is the problem with government, John. We're dealing with it. It really is. And you know what the shame is? Look, I don't have it because I was going to. I'll make it. I want to bring it to a council meeting. But a bucket, you cut the bottom off of it, and that's you take the bucket and you have money, and you just keep pouring it in. And for some odd reason, it never gets filled. And that's how government looks at the taxpayer. Shamefully, it's accurate. I mean, we're seeing it to a great degree on what's been happening relative to these fraud cases. We're talking billions of dollars that are just disappearing, and nobody seems to know where they're going. And some do know, but we're not hearing about it. Um, and it's not just in one state; it's all over the country. Um, this is a problem.
Nick,
We had
remember that, Nick, you're on a recorded line here. Are you saying that there's fraud going on in the government here in Bridgewater?
I
You
don't know, but I think
better,
it's under investigation. And all I'm saying is that's what the point of the finance committee is, in my opinion, based on reading the charter and our role. We're a line of defense for them to make sure that we're actually reviewing spending and budgets. And when people ask questions, it's a matter of, so that they're paying their taxes and they see them going up, and we're building that, and we're bonding this, and they do want things like they want clean water. They're paying for it. They're just like any other product. Uh, any of these things, you need answers for them. And you know, being a little older, I think I'm the oldest in the trio here. Um, I, I can tell you from my experience in paying real estate taxes since the 1970s, I've yet to see them go down. And that's a long time to show an increase. Everybody knows nothing lasts forever. At some point, there will be the the proverbial hippie holding the sign back in the 60s, the end is near. Well, maybe the end is close. And I'm hearing it more and more from people that I deal with, not only in Bridgewater, but in other places. And that's what actually brought me to where I am right now on this position. When I was asked if I would be willing to do this, and I thought to myself, you know what, maybe I might be able to add a little bit of that side of the coin to the conversation. It's important. Not everybody, are being paid extremely well, and not everybody has a completely comfortable and secure position in their jobs. The private sector, it's capitalism. It changes, and not everybody gets a pension. The government gets a pension. That's probably the last bastion of that. It's a wonderful thing, but somebody's going to pay for it. So people are asking for accountability. And I think that's where we are. I know I've pontificated for a while here, but it's important to hear, I believe. Um, Someday, God willing, Dana, you'll be my age. And you too will look back, because it's a very interesting thing. And I think John will back me up on this. The older you get, um, the more wisdom you get, and the more conservative you get, because you realize that, wait a minute, it, it just can't keep going the way it's going. So, our role, we're looking at debt. Do you think if we told the public, based on a per capita basis, what each taxpayer's their liability is for the debt in the town, I think it would be a surprise. Do you disagree?
I'd have to see the number and I think it's all in how you present it and how we talk about it to make sure that people even understand what
Hmm.
that number means to them and what it should mean to them. And so I think that's where the analysis that John's been doing can be really helpful because I want to see the picture before I figure out like if people would be surprised about it or not. And then I think the other thing to consider that came up at the joint committee with the school committee a couple of times, which is like, we're not going to fix this overnight. It took a while to get here, and so it's going to take a while to get out. And we all just have to commit to thinking about what are the steps we can take in this budget cycle to incrementally move towards the place that we all want to be, which is a more sustainable budget.
Mm.
You know what, Dana? I was I held public office in the mid 1970s, well before you were born. And I can tell you what you just said, I heard then. I hope that tells you something.
Yeah, I think we're at a pivot point, and I think a lot of communities are, just based on what we saw last year with the budgets and the overrides that passed and failed all around us. And
Mhm.
I mean, the Commonwealth's budget is also in tough shape, right? So like the budget comes out tomorrow. She's been talking about it. It's been a really challenging year. And so I think we're all at a pivot point. It's causing everyone to think about it, but the important thing is to make sure we're taking the right steps now to set us up and not
Mhm.
just doing something rash. So we want to make sure we're coming up with a system, which is why, John, I'm very interested to see the charts you put together because I'm definitely a numbers person. And so once we have something, I think then it's how do we engage with Justin and Lori and the rest of the staff to really understand what those numbers are telling us and how they use it.
Mhm.
Because those sheets they send out from the Munis system are horrible to read. Um,
Yeah. Hmm.
they're just really difficult. And so trying to make it, and Justin and I have talked a little bit about this of like, how do you talk to people about budgets who don't understand budgets? It's a lot of what I do. Um, and I think it's something that our community really needs is people who can understand the nuance and then communicate it in a way that means something to people and will help them understand, okay, this is why we're doing an override this year, or this is why we're not doing an override this year, and this is why your water bill is going up. This is why your sewer bill is going up. So how do we talk about that stuff in a way that means something to people?
Yeah, I know, but you know what? As you go down this though, so last year when they did do the override and it failed, due to most of it was due to the school side when they went out and gave a contract before knowing how they were going to fund it. So then the town gives them another 890,000 or $1 million. Now they want 4.5% on top of that. I mean, and maybe rightfully so. I mean, the schools still aren't good or whatever, but at some point, when you only have 2.5% overall and you're giving out 5% here and there, the thing is just not sustainable, for
Totally
sure.
agree.
And I
Yeah, that
think,
math doesn't work.
yeah, and I think
Right.
it's a lot sooner than people think. And so when and I don't disagree with an override, but when you talk to the people who are believing in it, my first question to them is, what are you going to go ask for? How much is it going
Right.
to be? And
Right.
we haven't paved one road, and you they tell us it's 40 million. The last override, they put in $400,000 for road paving. I mean, that the whole ask just, and it's going to sit with everybody. And if it fails again, then I don't know what we do as a town,
Right.
Yeah,
Nope.
because
I agree with that.
we put all the pressure points on this thing. Is financially, this thing is as tight as it's going to get without additional funding coming in from somewhere,
Okay. So if I may,
in my opinion.
as the clerk, um, so let me, I just want to, let's go through for a
Wait,
moment.
how old is the clerk again? You've only told us twice. You're the old, or four times you're the oldest one here in the meeting.
I am.
All right, I'm
I,
sorry, Nick. I
I'm,
interrupted.
I know. I'm 27. All right. I'm sorry, Dana. I know. You're older than me. Um, she's better looking too, but that's another story. Um,
Nick,
um,
you're being recorded here, buddy.
that's okay. It's for public consumption. I would say this in public. Anyway, let's just so I have this down. Um, so for the next meeting, we're looking for more information. Is that correct? You've got a FOIA request. Oh, John, is that correct?
I have a request into the school department for the 2024 audit, which
I don't think we have to do FOIA because we're on the town committee. We can just ask them.
I tried and I was told by MJ I had to.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Hmm.
Well, I
We're no
didn't
different.
either. And then they told me to reach out to the superintendent, but his email is nowhere to be found out there. So the only way I knew how to request information was to.
A FOIA.
Okay.
And by the way,
But if I'm
Dana,
wrong, Dave, I mean, I'm
No,
not.
I
I'm not. This is not my forte.
yeah, let me look into that.
no, and
Because
Dana, you know what? If you read the charter, sometimes it's fruitless, but if you read it, it says we are entitled as this committee, we're entitled to seeing these documents. So what you said, it should be accurate. But unfortunately, I've heard from many that you have to ask. I know of counselors that have had to put in FOIA requests for school department information,
So
which
what I asked for, Dana, was that the 2023 audit was out there, but 2024 is not out there, and it should be available by now. I mean,
Yeah.
if we don't have an audit by, and then they gave us 2026 2026 actual or budgeted line items were out there by account, but the 2024 and 2025 actual line items aren't out there. So I've asked for those as well, and I don't care. They have them in PDF, and I can take a PDF and put it into an
Yeah.
Excel into my database, and then that will give me what I need to at least get 3 good years of information.
Okay.
okay. So 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 Dana, what information are we giving to Josh to try to circulate amongst the three of us?
So I think he sent me a bunch of information that John had asked for. I want to make sure you have that, Nick. So I'm going to ask him to
Okay.
send that to you. And then I think, John, as you get more information, can you just send it to Josh so he can get it back to me and Nick? That way we're all working off the same base of
Well, you know what,
information.
Dana, could I share with you without publicizing it all? Because if it's not the way you guys want to see it, then let's reformat it and get it in the right or
Yeah, I have to talk to figure out. I'm new to the town stuff. I think what I heard on the other committee was that we should just go through Josh for everything to make sure that we're not breaking open meeting law because if we email, because there's so few of us on this committee.
uh,
So it all has to go through Josh. I'm happy to discuss the formatting, but I mean if it's in an Excel, I'm pretty sure it's going to be fine by me. Um,
okay. All right.
Is there I mentioned this to John before. It'd be great if we were able to if there was a repository that we could access so that we wouldn't have to wait for emails and so on, so that we could just go on to obviously I have a funny feeling that the town departments do have something like that in that really great server room that they have that we're trying to fund. But there should be somewhere where we could go, like a Google Doc. You know what I mean? Go in and we can access that
so
information. So,
Munis is the accounting system that all the municipalities use, and everything lives in there. And so it's a matter of like what reports they run regularly out of that system and getting access to that. So I don't know that there's actually like a database in the way that you're thinking of it. Um,
mhm,
that exists. It would be just whatever reporting they're doing and then just making sure we get access to that. But that would be something that would be interesting to talk to Justin about to see if there is like a regular report we would want to
mhm,
see,
mhm.
and on what basis.
So,
Yeah, I mean, well, I've actually requested a number of times through MJ some kind of a dashboard that tells us
Yeah.
where we are. I mean,
mhm.
where are we revenue wise to budget, and
I
where?
think that is something like if we can do one thing as a finance committee, a dashboard would be
Amen.
a huge
Amen.
accomplishment because I have the same thought.
And not just for like revenue and expenses, but even the budget process, Dana, it befuddles me. Like the school went through their whole deal. They gave head count on there. Is that total head count or teacher head count? And where are they today? I mean, there's nobody thinks about, okay, here's where we are today, and here's the number of people we're going to hire and where we're going to be. So, and with the town too, because just give us what in the budget, how many people are we budgeting for? And
Yeah.
then where are we in actuality, and then give us the numbers for the revenue, give us the numbers on the expense side, break it out between payroll, benefits, and other, you know I mean, that
Yeah.
would just be some simple USA Today graphs or whatever that would make us all feel a little bit better about where we are. I mean, so I think they put in maybe 25 or 30 grand for snow and ice removal. You probably, I mean, I'm going to hate to see what that number is.
Oh, I'm sure this storm did a number on that.
Right, exactly. And this is the third event already, and you're only in mid-January. And so, I mean, when we have the next meeting of the finance committee, somebody should be telling us, guess what, guys, we're way over on
Right.
the
Correct.
obligation side. And not wait till, because if you wait till April and say, well, you know what, we got to do something. Well, if you got to cut $1 million in April, that means you've got to cut a lot of money because
Yeah.
you've only got 3 months left, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Months or so.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, some kind of a dashboard, and then, as Nick said, a shared repository or OneDrive or SharePoint or whatever the Google Docs or you know.
It's not rocket science. You know what I mean? I'm sure you have something
Uh,
like that, Dana, at the state. I mean, no matter where you work, most companies have something like that where here's the data that you need to do your job, regardless of what department you're from. It's up there. It's in a place. I just find it interesting that uh, and we're talking Bridgewater. I don't know about the other communities. They may be light years ahead of us for all I know. I really don't. But bottom line, we still need to if something really
well,
oh,
well,
go ahead.
for us, so if you can get that information for me, Dana, and then I will go and update this thing and send it to Josh, and then once we have that information out there, then maybe
Which is the piece that you're missing?
well, the school part, and then I got to go
Okay.
make sure I revisit all my numbers one more time because whatever I
Okay.
need from the town, I just have to call Lori up, and Lori and I,
Okay.
we've got a good working relationship here. I've been
Okay.
to a training class like 3 or 4 times already, so she welcomes me in there and teaches me government accounting.
So does she know? Does Laurie know? So when Dana talks to her, John, what? Okay, this is what he needs.
No, I only need stuff from the school. I don't need
Okay.
anything from
Okay,
Lori. Anything I need from Lori, she's wonderful to work with for me. I mean,
yep.
anything I've asked of her, and
No, I like her. I think
she actually
she does a great
enjoys
job.
when I ask good questions, I believe.
She's
Okay. Perfect. I
tough
will look
one.
into that. Um, and then when do we want to meet next?
And I'm so glad you just said that because I was talking to Josh and he says, "Oh, we're having a meeting on this date." Oh, thank you for consulting me. I was part of the committee. Um, let's see. For a date, February is coming up quickly.
Yes.
When's our next meet? The whole committee's next meeting? Do you recall?
I don't know that it's been scheduled yet. Let
I
me
don't
just
think there's been, they only set those when something's been assigned to us, and nothing's
yeah,
been
so I
assigned.
don't have anything.
So
Yeah.
why don't we schedule a meeting? What about a night, the week of the ninth? Do you think we might be in uh, stead there relative to having some of the information that John you were looking for? Dana, what do you think?
I think that works.
So,
The
uh,
week of the 9th, I can, yeah, any night that week works for me.
okay, good. The only night that I'm tied up at this moment is the ninth, so which is the Monday. So that means Tuesday or Wednesday. John?
I'm usually in Boston on Tuesday, so if we could do Wednesday, that would
Okay.
be
Yeah, there you go.
better.
We're narrowing it down. We're down to how about the 11th? John?
That works. I should be over the Super Bowl party by then, so it ought to be good.
That 3 o'clock game time was so mean because all my kids are like awake and they don't want to watch. So
There you go.
Oh, really? That's not
it's
right.
tough because it's like we prefer a night game or like the 1 o'clock game, at least they nap for half of it.
You go. Um,
All right,
I
2:11
am
to 7:30 work.
Seven
I
7:30
thirty.
good.
appreciate you guys doing the later start for me. It's
Yeah,
just
no,
much
7:30
easier to
works.
have them all in bed.
All right. So 2:11,
Yes.
7:30.
And Nick, you'll send the minutes to Josh for him to format.
Yeah, they're relatively simple. I'm not going to go into detail, to be honest with you, relative to this.
Minutes are supposed to just be like, what
There's some
topics did
top
we cover? So
topics
I
that were
think you're okay.
discussed. Okay, and then letting him know that the next meeting has been scheduled.
Okay. And I'll send him an agenda the week before that. But I think it sounds like we probably want to talk about just the overall picture, which we're going to get from John, and then just I think digging a little bit more into the retirement trusts.
Okay. Yep, I'll send it all out to him, and then he can share it, and then make we can make changes because
Yeah.
it makes sense to
Awesome.
me, but I'm kind of warped sometimes in what makes sense and what doesn't. So,
All right.
All
Someone
right.
needs
Well,
to motion to adjourn the meeting.
uh,
second. Okay, hold
All
on.
right.
third.
I have to write this. And to adjourn. I was second.
All
Um,
right. Now we have to do a roll call. So I'm an I. John,
Uh,
Nick,
and I'm gonna make that unanimous with an I.
excellent. Look at that. We were very efficient.
all right, our first meeting's completed. History. Here we
Thank
go.
you guys. We'll see you in a bit.
This is
Okay,
awesome. Yep.
thanks,
All
Dan.
right.
Take care
Thanks,
of that.
everyone.
Bye.
Have a good night.